The current divorce rate in the United States is around 40 to 50%, but this is a good thing. More divorces just means less unhappy relationships forcing themselves to keep going on. So in all reality, a divorce is the obviously best option to take care of a marriage that is horrifically failing. However, when some people divorce, they get bitter and they get angry and they start to fight over property, over money, and even over their own children. And this is normal, especially if the marriage has been going so terribly beforehand. But when people can't decide on their own whether or not they're going to get the house or their former spouse is, then lawyers and the court has to step in to help negotiate. And there have been many recent criticisms of certain court decisions, especially in custody battles. Some people are questioning whether or not a fair decision is actually met, or if there's a real bias between a father or a mother getting primary custody of their child. So that's what I'm going to look into today. I found some data on divorces in custody, and hopefully analyzing it will help us determine whether or not there's an actual bias between custody decisions and even child support payments. After looking through the internet, I found a very concise report by the United States Census Bureau titled Custodial Mothers and Fathers and Their Child Support 2013. This report included data from custodial parents, those who have primary custody of their child, reporting their child support income. It included some comparisons based on the data, but I decided not to use those and make my own comparisons based on the raw data, so I can more accurately determine what I want to find out. So, looking at the data, we can at a passing glance see that, first off, while the total of custodial parents is 13,000, only 2,000 of them are fathers and 11,000 of them are mothers, which seems like quite the discrepancy. So putting it through a 1 proportion z-test. So in this first test, the HO for the proportion of custodial fathers is 0.5 because I want to test whether or not the custodial fathers are equally represented. And the HA is obviously, since I need to determine whether or not fathers are underrepresented, P is less than 0.5. We find that in this case, P is around 0 plus, or so small that the calculator doesn't even register as a number other than 0. So we were able to reject HO and accept HA, meaning that the sample data supports the claim that the proportion of custodial fathers is less than 0.5, meaning that custodial fathers are significantly less likely to have custody of their child. In fact, only about 17.5% of fathers gain custody of their child, about 1 in 6, which was backed up by the report's own analysis. Then looking down, you see that out of the people who have been granted primary custody of their child, 53% of mothers were awarded child support, while only 31% of fathers were. Running through a 2-prop z-test, this one is a 2 proportion z-test between the proportion of custodial fathers who are awarded child support and the proportion of custodial mothers who are awarded child support. The HO in this situation is P of custodial fathers, the proportion of custodial fathers, is equal to the P of custodial mothers, the proportion of custodial mothers awarded child support. Since we're testing the claim that custodial fathers are awarded less child support, our HA is going to be P of custodial fathers is less than P of custodial mothers. And once again, in this statistical test, P is 0 plus, meaning that we are able to reject HO and say that the sample data supports the claim that the proportion of custodial fathers is less than custodial mothers, or in layman terms, custodial fathers are less likely to be awarded child support than custodial mothers. However, looking at the proportions of those who receive child support and who receive the full amount of child support, we can actually find that the proportions are fairly similar. There's only around a 7% difference in those who received the full amount, and only a 1% distance in those who received any child support at all. Going through another 2-prop z-test, the final 2 z-tests I'll explain in one go because they're basically the same thing. The HO in both of the situations was P of custodial fathers is equal to P of custodial mothers. The HA of this situation is P of custodial fathers is less than P of custodial mothers, since we're testing the claim that custodial fathers are receiving less child support than custodial mothers. The P for those who received any child support is around 1 minus, meaning that we are unable to reject H0, meaning that the sample data does not support the claim that fathers receive less child support than mothers. The P for those who receive the full amount of child support is 0.019, and since our alpha is 0.01, it is not small enough to reject H0, which means we fail to reject it, meaning that the sample data does not support the claim that custodial fathers who receive the full amount of child support is less than the proportion of custodial mothers who receive the full amount of child support. Both of these situations essentially means, in layman's terms, that custodial fathers are not receiving less child support than custodial mothers, meaning that there seems to be absolutely no bias whatsoever between the sexes in who actually receives the child support they're awarded, which seems to signify that the bias does not lie within the individual, but it lies within those who are making the decision regarding being awarded child support and those who are granted primary custody. Now, there are certain limitations to this data. The report itself admits that it covers a strange range of ages when it comes to children, because child support can be awarded up to 21 years of the child's life, which conflicts with the Bureau's normal definition of a child as being under 18 years of age. The most glaring problem here is that there's no distinction between a custody battle or a mutual agreement when it comes to custody and child support. There's nothing in the data that differentiates a child support agreement and a child custody agreement that's based on a court ruling versus something based on a personal discussion made by two civil adults. We would be able to come to more accurate conclusions regarding a judge's bias versus the individual bias if we were able to differentiate the two. Also, since this study does come out in 2013, and my question is based on a difference between sexes in marriages, this does not cover same-sex marriage at all. There's also a possible underreporting issue for the amounts that were received, because some of the states are actually able to retain some of the child support on behalf of the children instead of allowing it all to be given to the parents, so they might have underreported the amounts they've received. Overall, I believe this study has been able to at least determine a bias on the decision of whether a father or a mother will be granted custody and whether or not a father or mother will be able to receive child support. However, if I were given more time and more resources, I would probably look into a more case-on-case basis, probably with a smaller sample size, but being able to specifically determine whether or not it's a judicial issue or just a personal issue. With that said, it does seem like there's a bias here, and that probably should be addressed in the future and hopefully corrected. Or at least there should be more research done into this inequality and the cause of it.